I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In this analysis, we'll be looking closely at a statement Barry Morphew made on April 5th, 2021. It's lengthy and there's a lot to dig through, so let's get started. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind we are now at episode 10 of the 13 that were scheduled to deal with these statements. So we've still got at least 3 to go before we've completed that process. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Page 92 of the affidavit deals with the epic April 5th interview. It's one of the final interviews Barry gave, and also one of his longest before he was arrested and charged with his wife Suzanne's murder. To be clear, those charges have since been dropped without prejudice, which means Barry is a free man right now, at least unless and until the cops decide to act again. We don't know if they are going to. Things are a little different now in 2 respects. One, Barry has instituted a $15 million lawsuit against over a dozen of his accusers. I think he did that in May this year. And 2, Suzanne's remains were unexpectedly found less than 3 months ago. And since then, there's been almost 3 months of nothing. Barry's interview on April 5th came almost 3 weeks after his previous interview on March 10th. Let's take a look at that April 5th interview. At approximately 10:25 a.m., Special Agent Grissing and Special Agent Harris contacted Barry at his residence in Poncha Springs. And the previous video I did dealt with Poncha Springs, so if you want to imagine where that house is and what it felt and looked like, well, you can just go and watch that video. But what is really interesting in this interview, it's 2 parts. I'm not sure if they came back later that day. But these 2 FBI agents placed 26 exhibits in front of Barry. So they really meant business. This wasn't just a quick hello. It wasn't like a quick pop in and pop out. They basically really wanted to do a proper interview with Barry, kind of on his own terms and on his own turf. And so they had with him, they certainly had prepared 26 exhibits. And these included photos that Suzanne, for example, sent to Libla, for example, of herself, selfies, cell phone data, search photos, timelines of his activities, especially on May 9th and May 10th, and then also surveillance photos. And the whole idea was, okay, Barry, look at that. What's your comment? How do you react to that? What can you tell us about that? And so it starts off on page 92 of the 129-page redacted affidavit. Barry says, mentally, still kind of in that just confused mode about, and I've shared this with you guys about, I was one way, and then when you guys told me about the affair, just did a 180 in my mind. I don't even know if it's a fair way for me to think sometimes. So he seems to be the victim here. He's not worried about his wife's disappearing. He's kind of worried about how he's coping with the knowledge that she had an affair. And he seems to be making the claim, and I guess creating the impression that he found out about the affair from law enforcement. But it's quite interesting just the way he even frames it himself. He says, I did a 180 in my mind. One wonders how often he does 180s in his mind. Anyway, Special Agent Grissing asked what Barry meant by what is a fair way to think about this. Barry said, I don't think about her the way I did before. You told me that. Obviously, I think any guy would say that. I love her, I forgive her, but the betrayal is just harder. And I never was unfaithful on my part. So I just don't understand it. it's quite interesting how he seems to fall over his words there a little. To say, I never was unfaithful on my part. It's a very strange way of saying it. Instead of saying, I never was unfaithful, wouldn't you say, I was never unfaithful? Or you might say, I don't know why he says on my part. I know what he means, but the other thing is he says I was never unfaithful during my what? What was he meaning to say there? It's almost like he's saying, I never was unfaithful during my marriage. And then he doesn't mention that. Anyway, he says, I want to blame it on the cancer, the chemo, the drugs, the alcohol. And if I could blame it on that, I would feel better. And I'm not quite sure what he means. I think he's saying she betrayed me because she was not herself. She was undone, undermined, a little bit in a different state of mind because of her health. And I kind of see it completely the opposite way, is that she was more herself, more who she really was, after she sort of came through the cancer. Anyway, he says, I don't even think the girls would talk to her if they found out she did this. Now, what's quite strange again is he seems to be creating the impression here that the girls didn't know that their mother had an affair. And although it's not absolutely clear, it's not 100% explicit, Suzanne does seem to suggest in some of her texts to Sheila that Barry had betrayed her by telling them that she had an affair, perhaps in that spiel to kind of get them on his side and turn them against her. But in any event, there seems to be uncertainty on whether the girls knew about the affair or whether they didn't. And here he's saying that they didn't know. He says, I don't even think the girls would talk to her if they found out she did this. And she did this means she cheated on their father. Now, interestingly, there's a footnote here, footnote number 70, where they say, at the end of this interview, Barry tells agents he has told the girls about Suzanne's affair. And so just in terms of that, it seems a little bit of a disingenuous comment to make. Special Agent Grissing asked about the time when Barry texted someone in Mexico about Suzanne not being the one receiving texts from blank. Barry replied, well, blank had witnessed that before at the house, where it was a time where Suzanne was really just banging me up about having somebody. So yeah, Barry's actually admitting that there was a time, I think it was 2019, I'm not 100% sure, where Suzanne suspected him. And yeah, it's kind of on the record that he's saying that she gave him a hard time. And he said, and I was kind of at my wit's end and grabbed her phone one time and something was at school but was there. And so here he's saying that he didn't like her accusing him, and so he took her phone. Now, the footnote here reads, this is the second time Barry admitted to grabbing Suzanne's phone, with the other time being in Mexico. Why this is important is one does wonder whether he grabbed Suzanne's phone on the Saturday. Because if he'd done it once, perhaps he'd done it quite a few times. Then he said, and I just letting you know, you need to come down and hear this. I said, your mom thinks I'm having an affair. There's no way that I've ever done anything. And like I told you guys before, that was the only time we ever had arguments. So this seems to be an acknowledgement that in front of their daughters, there was kind of a situation of discussing whether he had an affair, and him, I guess, trying to defend himself. There's also a footnote here, 72, but we'll get to that in a second, which kind of deals with Barry's love life, I guess. Special Agent Harris said the agents are concerned about Barry's end-of-life planning steps, to including selling off assets and his statements of not being around anymore and his weight loss. Special Agent, and that's also quite interesting, is that as early as early April 2021, he's lost quite a lot of weight, and I guess he's looking quite good and is in quite good shape. Special Agent Grissing added that Barry's behavior with Shoshana, to include pictures of them taken at the Antlers Hotel, appears concerning. And so Barry's relationship with Shoshana Dog is documented following this section. So according to this, Barry already seems to have a new girlfriend, or is certainly with another woman at a hotel as early as April 2021, when he says he's feeling betrayed by Suzanne's betrayal of him. Barry said, well, I'll tell you now that she's a special person in my life, and I've told you before, she's a dear friend. There's nothing sexual going on with her and I. Barry continued, and I didn't meet her until October 25th. The first time I even saw her face to face and talked to her was October 25th. And I guess that's a reference to the previous year. So that would be June, July, August, September, around about 6 months after his wife disappears. The first time I ever even saw her face to face, he says, was October 25th. He continued, my daughters know about Shana. They know we're friends. They know I go over there. And I've been there late at night, but we're talking and we're just helping each other, and that's it. Special Agent Grissing addressed the end-of-life planning again, and Barry said, no, I'll be honest with you guys, and I've shared this with you. I'm a tough guy. This has been painful to me, and just being done with it, I've definitely thought about it. I could never worry about that. I know that the selling of the assets is just for me to get out of here. I'm getting out of here. And as I mentioned in the previous video, Barry seemed to be in town almost like many months later. So Barry has articulated, according to footnote 73, numerous times that he's considered something drastic and has liquidated his assets and plans to leave town. It's quite interesting. He's liquidated his assets, plans to leave town, and says he kind of doesn't want to live anymore, which, if you think about it, if he does disappear, it would be easy to assume that he'd gotten a lot of money and then left town and then just disappeared. Oh, well, is he still alive? Which is, in a weird way, a similar psychology to Suzanne herself. She disappears, and does that mean she's alive or not? Special Agent Grissing discussed the goal of agents to complete the audit with the gaps that exist and the intention to complete the investigation through the best means possible. Barry asked, and you assured me that if we get unintelligible for you guys, you'll clear me. Special Agent Grissing agreed, and Barry continued, I just need to get to move on from this to start healing. And now at this point, they begin the discussion of Exhibit 1. We've only got to the point now where they're going to discuss Exhibit 1, and they're 26. And we're only going to deal here with Exhibit 1. This is why it's such a long interview. Special Agent Grissing introduced the first page, containing a photo of the surroundings of Barry's house, and titled Sheila's Visit in 2019. Now, Sheila was one of Suzanne's best friends. It was one of the people that she was communicating with up until the moment she died. When asked what was going on, Barry laughed and said, and I told Suzanne this, and I don't know what she told Sheila, but I was in Arizona hunting, and I had been camping for 7 days, smelled like crap, looked like crap. I thought they were in town eating, and I just wanted to make sure they weren't in the house. And I just wanted to get in there and take a shower. And I looked, and it didn't seem like anyone was there. Just went back and went up on the hill, and I looked. I didn't see anything. And they were in there, and I guess they called the Cushmans. And then Pete comes flying out with his pistol. You kind of have a situation there where they feel spied on, if that's the word. They feel that Barry is stalking around to such an extent that they call someone to help them. This was while Suzanne was still alive. Barry continued, I smelled like freaking crap and looked like crap, and he wanted to see if they were in the house. Don't you just say, are you home? I'm going to have a shower. Isn't that normal? Special Agent Harris asked Barry if Barry pulled his vehicle into the driveway, and he said, no, I pulled into Betty's drive over here in the cul-de-sac. In other words, he didn't drive and park. He seemed to be approaching the house in a surreptitious way. And why all of this is quite interesting was this behavior repeated around the time that Suzanne disappeared or died? Special Agent Grissing asked why he parked away from his house, and Barry said, just because I wanted to see if they were there. He said he could shower somewhere else if needed, but I haven't seen my wife in 7 days. I'm going to shower. I don't want Sheila to see me like this. That's all I was doing. Special Agent Grissing said the agents were wondering if Barry suspected Suzanne was in the house with her lover. Now bear in mind this is way back in 2019. Barry replied, no, I knew Sheila was there. When Special Agent Grissing repeated, you knew Sheila was there? He said, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Now, that's as far as we're going to take it. I'm not going to take it further than that. We'll deal with some of those other exhibits in the next episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.